Hello friends, this video is going to come to you in two parts. The first part is going to be my response to your answers to my question, and the second part is going to be my audio journal of when I was in Panama, because I already recorded that, so it'll be easy, and I feel like it answers Robert's questions pretty nicely. My trip to Panama was a pretty significant recent life event. For all three of you, I'm somewhat concerned about parents being your choice of power of medical attorney. It's not terrible. It's not like you chose a significant other. That would have been the worst. But it's fine. Make sure you do switch that out before they become senile. Like, at the point they start hesitating to make daily life decisions, that's when you want to start thinking about maybe choosing somebody else to be your power of medical attorney. Personally, I don't want my parents to have to make that decision for their child. I mean, it's not easy decision for anyone to make, but that's just personally. Whereas if you had chosen a significant other, I would have told you that you were wrong. The other critique I have is that you need to be more specific. You had varying levels of specificity. You saw how much specificity I provided in the Word document I sent you. And the reason for this is that there are serious consequences for not being specific. And it is a little bit easier for me, I admit. Like, this is something we learned about in class. So I'm maybe more enabled than other people to make specific decisions regarding end-of-life issues. But there are tools online that can help you. Like, they'll ask you multiple choice questions like, if this happened, what would you want to happen? And they'll be a little bit more comprehensive than you just coming up with whatever. And there is a lot of gray area, I admit. Like, even if you're brain dead, but if your heart is still beating, are you alive? I personally don't think so. If you take the heart out of someone's body and put it with, like, electrolyte solution and oxygen and glucose, it'll still beat, but I don't necessarily consider that person without their heart in their body still alive. So I tend to think that brain death is actual death. Coma, if you haven't come out of it in 6 months, you're probably not going to come out of it, so I would consider that death. Locked-in syndrome, debatable because you're still conscious, and you can have an idea of which you prefer people to do, but you can't really express it. Fortunately, most of it, like, locked-in syndrome is pretty rare. You're probably not going to have to deal with it. I bring up locked-in syndrome, of course, because it's my worst nightmare. It's not as serious to talk about. Everyone is going to come to their end of the life. That makes this an important conversation. Locked-in syndrome's pretty rare. If you don't want to have a stance on that, it's fine. But the thing I want to say is, like, this is not a discussion about suicide. This is this isn't physician-assisted suicide. That's a separate issue. That's you being able to make decisions and then deciding to die. This is not a conversation about physician-assisted suicide. This is an end-of-life conversation. So, that being said, Robert, your answer was terrible. It was not very specific. I understand that you're afraid of being in the position where it could be considered that what you did was suicide, but having a stance on this issue and forming, like, detailed directives is not suicide, and it is incredibly helpful to your family. After watching your video, I have no clue what you want. And I'm sure if your family watched it, they also would have no clue what you want. And now let's say something terrible did happen to you, and maybe they see the video that you made, and your mom has one opinion of it, like interprets it one way, your dad interprets it another way, and although technically your mother has the power, if your mother and father don't agree, and your father says, well, you should do this, and she doesn't decide with what your father, like, they could really argue, because they're dealing not only with the tragedy of whatever happening to you, they're dealing also with this strife. They don't agree. They have different opinions on what the next step should be. And usually this can be solved by, well, oh, the person who is here wrote down what they want ahead of time. Most people will agree you should just do whatever they wanted. But your family is going to be stuck in the situation if they don't know what you want and now they disagree. This issue has split families apart in the past. There have been huge legal cases, you can look it up if you want, of like the significant other wants the feeding tube removed, but the parents want it still in. So it's not helpful to any, like, dodging the question in the manner that you did was not helpful to anyone. And while you don't have to amend that to us, like, definitely when you have the, if and when you have this conversation with your family, and you should, be more specific. And if you feel that coma is still alive, and you feel that dying in that situation would be suicide and you're against suicide, then by all means, request that someone keeps you in coma indefinitely. It's not as... it's expensive, but it's a feeding tube and someone to turn you over every once in a while. It's not super intensive. So, like, if you feel that coma is life, and you feel that choosing to die in that situation would be suicide, then don't choose to die in that situation. And don't feel bad about however you elect. But elect something. And yes, as Aaron stated, this is the broccoli of all questions. But let me remind you that broccoli has several vitamins and minerals, as well as protein and fiber. It is very good for you. And similarly, this question can prevent your family from being torn apart. I don't know. Then again, like, I've met Robert's family. They seem like nice enough people. I like to think that they would be able to agree. But again, make life easier for them. I had some friends, some of my YSERV friends, come visit from EMU, and I was, like, talking to them in things that I just, like, often talk and think about it, and, like, I am so morbid. Like, I mean, I can't help it, like, we learn about 15 different ways to die every week, and different diseases and medications for, like, yeah, medical school is morbid. In a good way, I think. But, yeah, so if that comes across strong, I apologize. So here's part 2.
So I'm going to try something a little bit new, an audio journal. I've done a written journal in the past, but I forgot to bring, a journal kind of a book. I have a 5-subject notebook, but I don't really think that makes good journal material. I'd rather do it audio. We'll see if my phone's battery holds out for the whole week. It is March 10th, 7:24 local time, which is the same time as it was when I left, except that since I left, daylight savings time has happened. So, my watch has the correct time, and I haven't changed it. My phone has the wrong time. I am in Panama, close to Bocas del Toro, with a group called Floating Doctors. And pretty much what it sounds like. They're doctors who float on boats, going from town to town on their boats, being doctors. And I am here as a medical student volunteer. Right now, I'm lying in my bed between dinner and shower. I can hear some insects outside. I can hear a bunch of people socializing around me. I think there's 3 groups here. 2, but there's going to be 3. The 2 groups that are here now are mine, EVMS, one from University of South Carolina, University of Southern California, and a group of dentists I don't know where from, should be here, or are here, I don't know. So I'm here on a medical mission trip. First one since I was 14. And honestly, it feels a lot like the one when I was 14. Except that I'm going to know a little bit more and be a little bit more useful. I spent today pretty much acting as a tourist, going around town, looking at the sights. Took a boat to a beach, played in the beach a little bit, for a little while. And I don't know, a lot of times doing the touristy stuff bothers me because I feel like I'm infringing on the local culture and supporting, foreigners who have taken up root here. But today I didn't think too much about that. I just kind of enjoyed it. I don't know which is the better approach. Tomorrow, though, is when I'm going to start serving the locals, or at least starting to prepare to serve the locals. So I'll be helping load things onto boats, and then we'll travel to another part, an area that's kind of far away, and we'll unload the boats, we'll set up hammocks to sleep in, and then we'll go to bed. The following day, we will set up a temporary clinic for the local area. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be staying there 3 days, so we'll be sleeping in a hammock for 3 nights. So this is my last night on a bed. I do like sleeping in hammocks, though, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm pretty salty right now. Literally, my body is covered in salt because of the spray of the canoe, which really was a lot of fun. Bothered some people, and I do feel kind of sticky, but, a splash of salt water on the face, I think, is kind of refreshing. I spent a lot of today, besides being a white tourist, spending a little bit of time just sitting and not thinking, which is a little bit weird. It felt good, just because in medical school I'm always having to think about what's the next thing I need to do, how am I going to use my time efficiently, and now it's like I have the opportunity to just be. And that's not something I get a lot of. It's something I didn't know I missed, but I'll take advantage of it now, because when I get back, it's going to be back to the grind. You hear it? The background conversation? The frogs, the crickets. This is what I'm falling asleep to at the end of another night in Panama. This time I'm no longer in a bed, but in a hammock with a mosquito net over top of me and a beautiful crescent moon shining in my face. Today we received a lot of information, a lot of orientation, a lot of education, and we also traveled from the main base to an island called Cayo de Agua, and we set up our hammocks. We learned about how to set up a clinic. We ate dinner, and now we're going to bed. Seems a little bit early to me. It's only about 8:30 on March the 11th, 2019. But it's been a long day, so I can sort of understand people wanting to go to bed early. I think breakfast is tomorrow at 7:30 a.m., and then right afterwards we're going to start setting up clinic. I'm going to be paired with an OBGYN who I've interpreted before. Well, I was supposed to interpret for her at an OBGYN volunteer clinic, but she pretty much took care of it herself. She speaks Spanish pretty well, so I'm not exactly sure what my role will look like, but I'm part of what is a provider team in the clinic. So I will be assisting in her in some way. Not sure exactly how, but I'm looking forward to learn and find out. There seems to be a little bit of clicking between the EVMS students and the USC students, but I suppose that's just to be expected because, when you have two groups of people and a lot of them know each other, the people who have something in common are naturally going to stick together. And if we were going to have a situation where people weren't clicking together in groups, we would have had to have someone very intentionally subvert that natural human behavior, but no one did, which I suppose is fine. I did talk to some of the people from the other group a little bit, and they seem like wonderful people, and hopefully as I work alongside them, I'll get to know them a little bit better. I also hope to spend a little bit more time with some of the people who are native to this island and surrounding communities. And I haven't had a full Spanish conversation for a little while, so it'll probably take me a little while to get warmed up, but hopefully I'll get going and everything will go okay. I might want to consider going over some of my flashcards, but I did that on the airplane ride here. Some of my Spanish vocabulary flashcards. I might do that before, after finishing this audio journal and before starting my podcast. Shouldn't take too terribly long. It seems like a lot of filler time has passed between now and tomorrow morning when we actually get the clinic set up. I really am quite excited to start doing the work that I came here to do. I realize it's, not a huge contribution considering my skill level, but I want to contribute what I can, and and that's what I'm here to be part of the provider team. I feel like the couple days getting here, I don't know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of getting here. I got to see a lot of nature, but it's still all just waiting for what is really, the clinic. Who am I kidding? I've been waiting most of my life to get into the clinic, and I have a lot of time left to wait before I am actually providing patient care. One last thing that I wanted to add to my log that I just thought was kind of funny, but not like the ha-ha funny, but the other kind of funny, One of the leaders of Floating Doctors was saying that he, out of curiosity and interest, just mentions to mothers here in Panama that some mothers in the United States choose not to have their children vaccinated. And on more than one occasion, the mothers asked him, is that because their families are too large? Assuming, of course, because, again, this is a people who remembers the time before vaccines. They remember what the vaccines are here for. So they assume that if a mother is not vaccinating her children, that it's because they want her children to die because the family's too big and can't support another child. Which is like, it just tells you something, So today is March 13th, I think? Yeah, I didn't record yesterday, because I was tired, and I'm also tired now. So I'll probably take a Benadryl here shortly, head off to sleep, although the girls are changing now, and, I'd have to make them uncomfortable to get my Benadryl so it can wait. It's not really helping my allergies, though. I've got a rash all over my antecubital area and my neck. So we've had got some bug bites on my feet, a little bit of sunburn behind my ear, although that's getting a little bit better. Maybe a little bit of a cold, sore throat, runny nose, that kind of thing. It's not terribly comfortable, but, it's been worse. Like that one time, I like used shampoo that I was allergic to as soap over my whole body. That was worse. So, nothing unbearable here. We've had 2 days of clinic, so that's been an adventure. The first day, I was helping Pam. I wish I remembered her last name so that I could be like Dr. So-and-so, but no. But she doesn't seem to be mind being called by her first name by anyone. So, I've been... Yeah, so yesterday I helped her a little bit. She speaks pretty good Spanish, but could use a little bit of translation here and there. It's interesting. She doesn't necessarily practice a lot of the history taking techniques that we learn in clinical skills. It was a lot of directed questions and not a lot of open-ended questions. I'm not sure if that's because that kind of thing didn't used to get taught, or, she's been a provider for a while, or if it's because of the language barrier, or if it's just because that's how OB is, and you just have a list of questions to ask because you have to ask everything. I don't know, but it was different from what I've seen in other places, different from family med, different from clinical skills, but still a really good experience. I got to see, this isn't the first time, but I got to see a mother smiling at the first sound of her baby's heartbeat on the Doppler, which, that is a profound kind of a smile. I love getting to see it. Got to see a couple interesting clinical cases. Got to see some babies on ultrasound. Got to talk to some children about, hey, that's your brother or sister on the screen. Of course, our ultrasound tech doesn't know how to determine gender, which I find, because, parents, that's the one thing they want to know. Oh, what's my baby's sex? But, she can, figure out the crown height and the volume of amniotic fluid and, all this. That is clinically useful, of course. But, can't tell the gender. Because that's not her training, but, that's fine. That's not as important. What's more important is that the mother and baby are healthy. There was one lady we had to convince to go to the hospital, and that was because, it was her... she had had a bunch of pregnancies. She was getting up there in years as far as being a mother goes. Not... she had a pretty high risk of bleeding. Things like that. So we wanted her to give birth in the hospital because the risk of complications is substantial. But, she really wasn't comfortable with it. But there's a community member here who has a lot of faith in the healthcare system of Panama. And, a lot of faith in the way and what can be done in the hospital for birthing goes in general. So, that was... It's good that we could recommend that. And she assured us that she would get her friend to the hospital in time. It's tricky to determine her date, because... Well, that was the other thing. She didn't want to have a kid necessarily. She was taking birth control. Depo, which lasts for 3 months. I think I hear a lizard chirping. It sounds adorable. But I don't see it. Oh yeah, she had been on birth control, but, take an injection every 3 months and you won't get... But she missed one and got pregnant. And, isn't necessarily in the best physical condition for giving birth, so... Tricky situation. That seems to be a lot of the healthcare that we provide is, birth control, because they don't have a lot of options. Depo is one of the most convenient, although it does have some not-so-great side effects. Yeah, it's interesting how birth rate is tied to prosperity in so many different ways. And it's a pretty poor community. Anyway, so that was yesterday. Today, I started out doing intake, just taking vitals, taking list of chief complaints down. So it kept me pretty busy. We actually ran out of patients at one point. Like, they're saying we processed 75 people today, and it didn't feel like that at all. But I guess so. So just doing intake today. And then, well, for part of today, then they took me to interpret for a home visit, which was really interesting. I feel humbled that I was invited into their house. Two doctors from England. One was a medical student, his final year, so I guess 3 years ahead of me. Well, so their medical school is 6 years, and he was in his final year. Our medical school is 4 years, but 4 years of undergrad before that. And then one full-on doctor who started out as internal, but then specialized in rheumatology. So we followed a family to visit their mother, because she wasn't in a great situation for traveling, and she had some fairly complicated medical problems, had seen other providers before, like in, maybe not a high resource setting, but like a higher resource setting, enough that they had a CAT scan, and couldn't find out a certain diagnosis. And, we're like, only have the medical equipment that we took over on a boat, so we weren't really able to provide a whole lot of help. We gave some medications for some symptomatic relief, but nothing curative. So we're going to see her again tomorrow. Hopefully encourage them to go to the hospital despite having been to the hospital so many times and not being able to receive a diagnosis. It sounds like a really hard thing that they're dealing with. And it's just like cool experience, but like I feel so powerless. Like I want to help you, but I can't. And I'm just interpreting, and the doctors that are here can't even help that much. We'll see what we can do. But maybe with the floating doctor, they're thinking that with the floating doctors team, they can take her to the hospital and if it being more of a team effort, they can fix the problem. But yeah, tough situation. There's a lot of tough situation. Like, some of it seems like it's post-disaster, because there's some old broken down buildings. Like, it looks like there are things that used to have electricity, things that used to have running water. I did see a destroyed house, and I asked on the way to the house visit, and asked the person who was leading us, what happened to the house, and it's like, oh, they moved. So I asked why they moved, and I said, was it like a storm? And she just said, yeah. So I don't know if she was just saying, yeah, like, Spanish is my second language, yeah, or if it was, yes, it was a storm that caused the destruction of the house. So, I don't really know. There's a lot of uncertainty in general, because, Spanish is our second language, and Spanish is their second language, right? Their primary is Nobe. So, it would be nice if there was just, a Nobe doctor, Someone who spoke the language, who went away to medical school, came back, and... But that just gets to a bigger problem of people don't want to go to rural areas to practice medicine full-time anyway. People are okay with visiting, but no one wants to stay because all the conveniences are in the city. So, minorly, that's a thing that I spend a lot of time caring about, is rural health. What else can be said? It's been an interesting clinical experience. I can definitely see where, just more money would be helpful. I knew in theory that the money spent on my plane ride here would have been better spent by the people here. Um, I'm starting to see how that's true. Like, what if we could just pay boat rides for everyone to get to the hospital when they needed? What if we could just pay for a CAT scan to be flown into the island? I don't know how much that would cost. If that's like on the same order of magnitude as all our plane tickets or not. Like, what if we could pay a doctor to just stay full time on this island? And just didn't come ourselves. But I think part of that is then, like, it's kind of like a way for us to be convinced to come here, or to come to some rural location, despite the opportunity of comfort, or if maybe this is just the wrong approach entirely, I don't know. I mean, the urge to just go there to help someone is so much greater than just giving them, lots of complicated ideas. No one's agreed upon them. I don't know. Everything is hard. But I am grateful for the experience, and I do hope that it will make me a better provider in the future. And that even if it isn't the most efficient way of spending money, that it is providing some aid to the Nobe people on this island. Yeah, that's all I have to say for this evening. Have a good night. Today is March 14th at 10:30 p.m. Today we finished up our multi-day clinical trip. I joined the team that followed up on the lady that I talked about yesterday who had liver problems. We did an ultrasound, confirmed that yes, her liver was larger than it should be and its architecture was not intact. There's still no way of knowing why it was like that, but she doesn't want any further hospital investigations. I doubt her prognosis is good. She's certainly not comfortable. She has a lot of fluid in her abdomen. So, that's not great. There's not much to add to that. It's just a very unfortunate situation. And after we arrived back from that, we got on the boat, went to the beach briefly and swam, went to a bar, got really pretty badly burnt. That wasn't great. And then arrived back at the floating doctor's base. I got to have a shower. It felt so good, even though the water was so cold, against my burnt skin, and against my, like washing the salt off my eczema. Then I coated up on sunscreen, not sunscreen, aloe, and my eczema cream. So I'm feeling a lot better than I was. We also, after dinner, some of the providers talked about some interesting cases that they saw on the trip. I have been socializing a little bit more with the kids from California. A little bit less cliquey, but, it's still true that I'm more comfortable with the people from EVMS than the people, not from EVMS, just because shared experience and whatnot. So the second half of today has been pretty relaxing. Sort of going back to I'm a visiting tourist thing, unless I'm going far away to serve people thing. Although tomorrow we are going to be visiting the local nursing home. So it'll be interesting to see what that involves. Might also have some chores around base to do. We'll see what that entails. I guess I do want to just second how beautiful an area this is. The island has some crabs, a tiny bit of coral, some sponges, some fish. surrounded by mangroves. It's very beautiful here. Everything's powered by rain and sun. Really an incredible place, but yeah. I'm in a bed now, covered in a mosquito net, not a hammock, so it's a little bit more comfortable, I guess. Although I really did enjoy the hammock, it's not a bed. So, yeah, can't wait to see what tomorrow brings. So that is the sound of rain pattering on the roof and birds chirping in the distance. And a rooster in the distance. Maybe if I'm lucky I'll capture a little bit of the gobble of the turkeys. Today is March 16th at 6:45 a.m. About to leave the floating doctor's island. I didn't really record anything last night. I was pretty tired, but as I'm waiting for everyone to wake up, now seems like a good time. This will be my last log, because today is the late day. We leave Panama, going to fly to Panama City, and then from Panama City to Dulles, and then from Dulles I'll be home. In my home country, anyway. And then will come the culture shock. Well, the reverse culture shock. So it's been a pleasant stay here. Less time working than I would have expected. A lot of time relaxing, actually. This is way easier than medical school. Yeah, so yesterday we went to Asilo, local nursing home. And I had a conversation with two guys. There was one guy who had this progressive muscular dystrophy, so I was just like moving around his joints because it felt good to him and he couldn't move his joints. And I was also talking to another guy who had a bilateral above-the-knee amputation, but he was talking about how he used to play baseball. He played for the Bocas team and had visited other countries. It was a traveling team. Played in large stadiums, one that held like 104,000, another that held 44,000. He said that he would usually throw a lot of curveballs, not so many fastballs, but a lot of curveballs in order to strike people out. Seemed to have pretty fond memories, although played catch a little bit, but that ability hasn't stayed with him. It's interesting, the story of that nursing home. It used to be like everyone kind of cared, but no one did anything until someone came in and just like started organizing. The leader, Dr. Ben, was saying that it's kind of like an emergency situation where if you have someone who's trained and they, like, normally in an emergency situation, like everyone stops and stares and doesn't do anything. Nothing helpful anyway. But if you have a leader, they can say, okay, you call 911, you start CPR, you do, like, you call for help, you look through his pockets for any, like, medical information, that kind of thing, You can sort of organize it. And same thing there, so they came and started organizing the care that was being given to Asilo. And now it's actually a pretty nice place. The residents, it's not a high resource setting, but it's a high manpower setting. So the residents actually get pretty decent patient care. They don't have a lot of bed sores. They don't have, things that are caused by neglect. You know what I mean? And things that usually you have machines to help alleviate, people are helping to alleviate. So that sounded like a pretty neat place to me. We didn't spend a lot of time there, but I think the time I spent there was a good time. Yeah, and today we also got to see the team that went to a different location. Got to say hello to them again. We haven't seen them for a couple days. So I've seen all my classmates now. I'll spend a little bit of time in Panama City. I hope my passport doesn't get stolen like happened to my sister, so I'll be careful about that.
or try to be. Today, I woke up, stripped my bed, packed my things. Everything I have is like on my person or either inside of 2 backpacks. So I'm about to get ready for breakfast and leave on the boat to the airport and head out of here.